All right, so are you ready to jump into a deep dive today?
Always ready to dive deep, yeah.
I am particularly excited about this one because you have sent over some fascinating information on, get ready for it, camels.
Oh, camels. Love them.
I think we all kind of think we know camels, right? They're those, what, ships of the desert, the humps and all that. But I gotta say, digging into this Wikipedia page you sent over, wow.
Yeah, there's so much more.
So much more to camels than meets the eye, that's for sure.
It's true.
So I think for me, a good starting point, and I'll fully admit this, I always thought the hump was this reservoir of water. Like, oh, that's where they store all the, hydration for those desert treks.
Right, right. A common misconception.
Yeah.
It is actually, well, the hump is a reservoir, but it's not water, it's fat.
Okay, so I wasn't totally off, but fat, huh? How's that help in the desert?
So when that fat is metabolized, it releases water.
Oh, okay. So it's like their emergency water supply.
Yeah, you can think of it that way. And not only that, but it also provides them with a source of energy. They can go without food and water for pretty long periods.
Okay, so we're talking survival mode here. How long are we talking? Because I gotta say, even missing a few meals, I'm a little.
Well, think about this. A camel can actually lose almost a third of its body weight to dehydration and be totally fine.
Wait, a third? Seriously, that would be like game over for most animals, right?
Exactly. But camels are built different. Their red blood cells, for example, are oval-shaped.
Oval shape. Okay, hold on. I'm picturing tiny little footballs zooming through their veins right now.
Chuckles.
Yeah.
Not a bad way to visualize it, but there's a reason for that unique shape. It helps those red blood cells keep moving even when they're dehydrated, preventing clots.
Ah, so it's all about keeping things flowing even when resources are scarce.
Exactly. And when a camel finally does reach a water source, they can rehydrate incredibly fast. I mean, we're talking a 600-kilogram camel guzzling down 200 liters of water in just 3 minutes.
Whoa, that's like what? Chugging down a bathtub full of water? Impressive and a little terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, those oval-shaped cells really come in handy, allowing for that rapid rehydration without any issues.
Okay, so their blood's basically built for extreme hydration. That's wild.
Built for extremes, that's a good way to put it.
Which makes me even more curious about their origins, because get this. Camels, they're not originally from where we think they're from. They didn't just magically pop up in the Sahara, right?
Right, and this is where things get really interesting.
Hit me with it.
So, based on this article you sent, millions of years ago, camels were actually roaming around in what is now North America.
Wait, what? North America? So like camel cowboys. Hold on, my whole worldview just shifted.
Chuckles. Right. But it's true. They evolved there and eventually crossed the Bering Land Bridge into Asia.
So they were making that journey long before, any humans were even thinking about it.
Exactly. And they actually thrived in the old world, diversifying into the different species we know today. But here's the real head scratcher. They died out in North America.
So they made it all the way over to Asia, thrived there, but couldn't hack it in their own backyard. What happened?
Well, they disappeared around the same time as a lot of other large mammals in North America during the last ice age.
The megafauna extinction, right. So it wasn't just them.
Exactly. And that brings up a whole other question.
Which is?
What role did humans play in their extinction on one continent, but not the other?
I mean, that is the question, isn't it? Because we've got camels thriving in Africa and Asia, but gone from North America. Makes you wonder.
It really does. And speaking of humans entering the picture, the whole timeline of camel domestication, that's another puzzle.
Oh, yeah, the excerpt mentioned something about that. What's the going theory these days? When did we start hanging out with camels?
Well, the traditional view was that dromedaries, the one-humped camels, they were domesticated in the Arabian Peninsula sometime around the 3rd millennium BC.
Okay, makes sense. Camels and pyramids? Seems about right.
Right. And then you have the Bactrian camels, the 2 humped ones. Those were thought to be domesticated in Central Asia a bit later, around 2500 BC.
So different places, different times for our 2 humped friends. Got it.
Right. But there have been some recent discoveries that are throwing a bit of a wrench into those timelines.
Ooh, like what?
Well, they found some camel bones in Israel's Timna Valley.
Israel. Okay, that's not where I expected this to go.
And these bones, they're dated to around 930 BC.
So way older than the 3rd millennium BC timeline for dromedaries.
Exactly. And if these bones do indeed belong to domesticated camels, which some researchers believe they do,
it would mean that domestication in that part of the world happened centuries earlier than previously thought.
That's exactly what it means, completely shaking up the timeline we thought we knew. It's still a subject of debate.
Which makes you wonder, what else don't we know? What other surprises are buried out there, waiting to be discovered?
Right. And it makes you think about all the assumptions we make based on, incomplete information.
Speaking of assumptions, I had no idea camels were used in warfare. I mean, I pictured chariots and, horses, the whole 9 yards. But camels?
Yeah, it sounds a bit odd at first, but when you think about it, they've got size, they're strong, and get this, horses are actually terrified of camels.
Really? They are. I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. So just imagine an army of camels charging at you. I mean, talk about psychological warfare.
Yeah, that's an image. And we're not just talking about some recent thing, right? I was reading about the Battle of Korquar. That was in 853 DC.
Oh, yeah, you did your homework.
Yeah.
You're right. That is considered the first documented use of camel cavalries.
So camels have been a part of warfare for, what, over 2,800 years?
At least.
Hmm?
And their use continued throughout history, different cultures, different continents. Even the U.S. experimented with a camel corps in the 19th century.
I actually read about that. Isn't it crazy? There are still those old camel stables in California from that era.
I've seen pictures. It's wild to think about camels just hanging out in California, right? It just shows how their story is woven into ours in ways we don't even realize sometimes.
Totally. And speaking of camels and humans, I have to ask about this because this is the one that threw me for a loop. Camel milk cheese.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have to. I mean, I've heard of camel milk, but cheese. Was this like a recent invention?
No, not at all. Camel milk products have been around for centuries, especially in nomadic cultures. It's super nutritious and apparently makes some amazing cheese.
See, this is why I love these deep dives. You just never know what you're going to learn.
It's true. It's been a staple for nomadic cultures for centuries. Incredibly nutritious, a great source of sustenance. And now, with modern innovations, people are using it in all sorts of things. Yogurt, butter, even ice cream.
Camel milk ice cream. All right, now that I've got to try.
Don't knock it till you try it. There's this creaminess to it, unlike anything else. Okay, now you're just making me hungry. But we can't forget about camel meat either. I know it's not exactly a staple in, your average grocery store, but it's got to be a big part of some cultures, right?
Absolutely. Just like camel milk, it's a really important source of protein, especially in arid and semi-arid regions.
I was reading about, believe it or not, camel lasagna. Apparently, Australia has this huge population of feral camels, something like over 1 million.
Yeah, they're descendants of camels that were brought over in the 19th and 20th centuries, and their population just exploded.
Wow, talk about an unexpected consequence.
It definitely highlights how even an animal that seems, pretty harmless, like a camel,
Yeah.
can have a big impact on an ecosystem when introduced to a new environment.
Right. It's a good reminder that things are never as simple as they seem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's always more to the story. And it's not just, the big stuff like their blood and those humps. They've got all these smaller adaptations too. Like, did you read about the third eyelid?
Wait, a third eyelid. Okay, now that's just showing off. Are we talking like an extra eyelid on top of the other two? What does it do?
So it's actually more like this thin, translucent layer that can sweep across the eye. And it's perfect for those, dusty desert winds. Keeps the sand out, but they can still see.
So built-in safety goggles. Leave it to camels to come up with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Always one step ahead, those camels. And speaking of things that are hard to pronounce, have you gotten to the part about the dulla?
The what?
The gulla. D-U-L-L-A. Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know.
Okay, you're not really selling me on this one. What is it?
All right, so picture this. A male dromedary, the one-humped camel, and hanging from its throat, this large inflatable sack.
You're kidding, right? Please tell me you're kidding.
I wish I were. It's a real thing. And during mating season, they inflate this sack, and, well, it basically looks like a giant pink bubblegum bubble hanging out of their mouths.
Okay, I take it back. Camels are officially weird. But why? What's the point of that?
Attracting a mate, of course. It's all about showing off to the females and, maybe intimidating their rivals.
Well, I guess it's working, right? They've been around for millions of years, so they must be doing something right.
That's one way to put it. But speaking of doing things right, we've got to talk about those antibodies.
Oh, yeah. The excerpt mentioned something about their antibodies being unique. What's the deal with that?
So, camel antibodies, they're way smaller than the antibodies found in most mammals. And they're incredibly stable, too.
Okay, and that's a good thing.
That could be huge. Researchers think these camel antibodies might hold the key to developing new treatments for all sorts of diseases in humans.
Really? Like, we could learn how to fight off diseases better by studying camel immune systems.
Exactly. It's still early days, but the potential is there, which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
It really is. And I guess it just goes to show you never know where the next big breakthrough is going to come from.
Right? Could be from a camel, could be from fungus. You just never know. But it's a good reminder that, we need to protect all of this biodiversity we've got on this planet. There's so much we still don't know.
Totally. Speaking of things we're still learning about, you mentioned earlier that camels pop up in a lot of different cultures, mythology, and religion. I mean, that's not something you think about every day, but it makes sense.
Right. They've been a part of human societies for so long. For example, in the Quran, there's a story about a prophet who brings forth a camel from a rock, like a miracle, to prove his divine mission.
Wow, that's pretty powerful imagery. Any other examples?
Well, in Judaism, for instance, camel meat and milk are considered not kosher. So even though they're not explicitly central to the religion, they still play a role in defining dietary rules.
It's interesting how an animal can have these, like, symbolic meanings in different cultures.
It's true. And those meanings, they can change over time too, right? Like today, you've got the Bedouin tribes, for whom camels are absolutely central to their way of life. They rely on them for transportation, for milk, for meat, for everything.
Yeah, they're like the ultimate nomadic companions.
Exactly. But then you fast forward to the 21st century, and you've got, well, have you heard about the camel beauty pageants?
The Wait, hold on. Camel beauty pageants. You're messing with me.
I'm not. They're a real thing, especially in Saudi Arabia. They even have this huge festival, the King Abdulaziz Camel Festival, where millions of dollars in prize money are up for grabs.
Okay, that's wild. So what makes a camel beautiful? Asking for a friend? Is it like a perfectly shaped hump? Maybe extra long eyelashes?
It's more about their overall physique. Judges look for things like strong legs, a well-proportioned body, and a nice, healthy coat.
So kind of like the Westminster Dog Show, but for camels?
Exactly. Though apparently there was this whole scandal a few years ago because some owners were caught giving their camels Botox injections to try and get an edge in the competition.
You've got to be kidding me. Botox for camels. I don't even know what to say to that.
It just goes to show you, right? Even in the 21st century, with all the technology and advancements we've got, camels still capture our imaginations.
I mean, you're not wrong. It makes you wonder, what's the future hold for these creatures?
Right. They've been around for millions of years, seen it all. What's another few millennia for a camel?
Yeah, makes you wonder what they've seen, what they'd tell us if, camels could talk.
Oh, now there's a thought. A talking camel.
Right. I mean, they've been witnesses to, well, pretty much everything. But even without talking, I feel like I've learned a lot just from, this deep dive.
They are amazing creatures when you really get to know them.
Absolutely. So much more than just those, hump-backed ships of the desert.
Right, they're survivors, masters of adaptation.
Exactly. And with everything that's going on in the world today, all the challenges, it does make you wonder.
Like, what can we learn from them? How can their adaptations, those millions of years of evolution, maybe help us?
Okay, so not just like camel milk and cheese, but maybe, what, secrets to surviving in a changing world?
Hey, you never know. Maybe those antibodies hold the key to some new medical breakthrough. Or maybe it's something else, something we haven't even thought of yet.
That's the beauty of it all, right? We just don't know, which is kind of exciting when you think about it.
It is. There's so much out there still to discover.
Well, on that note, I think we've done our fair share of exploring for one day.
Agreed. It's been a wild ride through the world of camels.
From their weird inflatable throat sacs to those super antibodies, who knew there was so much to learn about camels?
You never know what you're going to find when you dive into these Wikipedia pages.
That's the truth. So, to our listeners out there, next time you see a picture of a camel, maybe you'll think twice before just dismissing them as, just another desert animal.
There's a whole lot more to them than meets the eye.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, keep exploring.